Okay, that's a lot to unpack. So this isn't even the last part of the book, but it felt like the finale of a book. There was like every chapter was a some major, either major reveal or major event or major plot twist. Um, Major characters are dead. Uh, I have no idea what's going to happen next. This is so far from the heist story I was expecting when I started this book. Because I've heard people call this a heist story, and it's really not so far, which I don't mind. I'm just saying, like, unless the fifth part suddenly turns into a heist, uh, it's more a story about a bunch of people who really, really want to do a heist, and they never get to do it because things keep going wrong before they get to the heist part. Um, anyway, let's talk immediately about the big thing that just happened here at the end. Full spoilers for the chapters in the video title. So I don't think Kelsier's dead. I don't buy it. I mean, we saw him die, but I don't think so. I think one of two things is going to happen. Either either he had time to burn the 11th metal before he died, and it's going to turn out that the 11th metal saves him somehow, or the person who died was not in fact Kelsier, but was one of the, let me check my notes here, Chandra? Now, the viability of that theory, the Chandra theory, is going to depend on what Chandra are, which we still don't know at this point in the book. I've got two possibilities there. Either the Chandra are shapeshifters who just take on the form of other people, and Renew was a Chandra who was shapeshifted into the shape of Lord Renault, in which case this possibility works, and the person who died could have been the Renault Chandra who managed to swap places with Kelsier in the fight somehow. So either that's the case, or Chandra are some sort of ethereal spiritual beings who possess people's bodies. In which case, I don't see how that would save Kelsier, because that would still be his body that just got killed. So if it's a Chandra, that only works if it's a shapeshifter. I guess we'll see. I could also be wrong and Kelsier could really be dead, but I really don't think so. I think I'm almost certain Kelsier is alive. It feels wrong for him to be dead at this point in the story somehow. So we finally met the Lord Ruler. He's terrifying, but I do like that he's depicted as fairly mundane, like in appearance. Like he's not, like you don't see him and think, oh shit, that's the Lord Ruler. Like Vin sees him and she's just like, oh, that's a guy. He looks like a guy. Which is a nice touch. I always like when that happens, when like super important figures are depicted as relatively mundane looking. The fight between Kelsier and the Inquisitor was so well written and so good, and I really, really, really want to see a visual representation of that fight. But I don't know how you would do it. I honestly don't know how you would depict allomancy visually without making it look like telekinesis, because it's important to note, of course, that like pushing and pulling with iron and steel, like you're not controlling the thing. You can't freely move it through space. You can only push and pull directly towards and away from yourself. So I don't know how they depict some of the cool tricks that Kelsier does here, which in effect make it seem like he's controlling them. I don't know how you would depict in a visual medium that he's not actually controlling them in any way beyond just pushing and pulling. But that could be a fun challenge. I think Mistborn is getting an adaptation at some point, right? I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that scene in particular, like the scene where Kelsier like creates a cloud of metal objects and just envelops the Inquisitor. I also really like that the Inquisitor's downfall is ultimately his spikes getting like stuck in a wooden panel behind him. That was very funny. I did like that. Nice little bit of physical comedy in the middle of this very tense action scene. What else? What else happened here? So, right, I'm going backwards. I'm starting from the end and going backwards. Before this big finale, Kelsier ends the Pits of Hathsin, which I did not expect, and I think is pretty cool. But also, I feel like it could have maybe been foreshadowed a bit more. Like, I feel like the fact that the geodes shatter if you use allomancy near them is something that I would have maybe mentioned offhandedly earlier in the book, so that when this happens, it's not so much Kelsier pulling it out of his ass, and more of a like cool, oh, I remember when you mentioned that moment. It's a small thing, but I feel like there wasn't enough setup for the payoff here, but it was still a cool scene. It was also one of the two times in this part of the book where we suddenly get a new point of view. In the first three parts of the book, it was solid Vin and Kelsier POV all the way through, from what I remember, apart from the prologue with the plantation ska. But now we have Elend as a POV on, I think, 2 separate occasions, and we have this random ska in the Pits of Hathsin as a POV. I am once again reminded of Elantris, which had a very strict and repetitive POV structure throughout the entire book, and then in like the final stretch before the ending, it suddenly started introducing new minor POVs, which is, I think, interesting. I think that's an interesting approach to the POV structure, I guess, of a book. And it makes the sort of like, it kind of makes sense. Like, as you get closer to the end of the book, you as the reader are privy to more and more information. You get to see things from more and more perspectives, whereas at the start of the book, you are limited to the perspective of your protagonists. I like that. That's clever. What else? Right. So, the political stuff going on in this section is interesting. So, we have once more several confrontations between Vin and the rest of the crew about Elend, and not necessarily just about Elend individually, but about like noblemen in general as a class. And it's clear that the book kind of wants us to be on Vin's side, I think. I think that the books, that if Sanderson is fairly good at presenting both sides of this argument well, like whether there should be any mercy or sympathy for noblemen or not. But it kind of feels like I get the vibe that we might be supposed to agree with Vin more, with her more sympathetic take on the nobleman, which is fine. I mean, it's good to have empathy for everyone, even your enemies, but Kelsier is kind of right that in a class war like this, you can't really afford to do that if you want to win. Like, if you want to win, you kind of do need to attack the entire oppressive class as a collective. You can't pick and choose the good ones and the bad ones. You're just not going to succeed that way, because even the good ones like Elend are gonna probably act against you if you let them, because it's in their class interest to do so, which we are still seeing. Elend is still a very is still a refreshingly nuanced character. Oops. I keep I kept being worried that Sanderson was gonna just do a, oh, he's actually perfectly good and on board with the revolution kind of thing. But I think that so far, Elend's development has been very nuanced. He's very much not a revolutionary at heart. He's like he's a liberal, actually. He's a liberal. he his heart is in the right place. But he is attached to the status quo. He hasn't made that leap of actually thinking that the status quo itself needs to change. He's just thinking of like, oh, within the current status quo, how could we maybe fix things a little bit? And as with most liberals, when the actual conflict comes between the forces of repression and the oppressed, he is going to have to choose a side. And I am very happy that at this point in the story, I'm still not 100% sure which side he'll choose. I think he's gonna ultimately side with Vin and the Ska, but I'm only like 55% sure. Like there's a 45% chance of the opposite happening, and I like that. I like the tension there, like not being sure which side this character is gonna fall on when the time comes. What else happened? There was actually some interesting stuff about allomancy in this section as well. So it's pretty heavily implied, even though none of the characters seem to have even thought of the concept, but it's pretty heavily implied that allomancy didn't exist before the ascension of the Lord Ruler. I'm thinking that allomancy is probably some kind of power that was stolen from the Terracemen in some way, since it's so similar to their powers, and we do know from the Lord Ruler's journal that their powers did exist before the Ascension. And there's also gold. We're introduced to gold, the 9th metal, so we now know all 10 metals. Plus the mysterious 11th metal, I guess, which we still don't actually know exists. Like, Kelsier could be full of shit. That could be anything that he's got. But yeah, gold... Here's my issue with gold. How on earth does anyone know what gold does? Like Kelsier says, it shows you alternate versions of yourself. Like if your life had gone differently, or if you had made a different choice. How do you know that's what it's showing you? You can't. Like, how did the first guy who figured it out figure it out? Because, like, all it does is just show you a different version of yourself. Like, for all you know, it could be making that up. It could be a future version of yourself. It could be your idealized version of yourself. It could be anything. I feel like there's a plot hole there, which is no one could possibly know what gold does just based on trying it out. The only way it could work is if gold actually, like burning it, also gave you an understanding of what it's doing. Sort of like how burning the 10th metal, what's it called? The important one. The one that, whatever. The 10th metal that everyone's, that's the main currency of the world. How am I blanking on this? Atium. atium. Burning atium gives you like a superior mental understanding of what you're seeing. Like if you see those atium shadows as just a normal person, you wouldn't know what to do with them. They'd be useless to you. But while you're burning atium, your brain can understand them. Maybe gold works the same way, but I don't think so, because Vin didn't seem to gain any insight into what was going on with her vision until Kelsier explained it. She was just kind of freaked out in general. And the final mysterious thing that happened here was when Kelsier was testing out Vin's ability to sense his allomancy through him burning bronze. She sensed a mysterious, distant allomantic rhythm, which I'm guessing is either the Lord Ruler, or yeah, actually, I don't know what else it could be. I'm gonna go with the Lord Ruler. Either that, or maybe it was like the Well of Ascension itself, wherever that is, up in the Terrace Mountains, up north. But the interesting thing about that scene was not so much that rhythm, which I'm sure will end up being something interesting later on, but the fact that Vin can do that, and that no other MISTBORN apparently can, sort of ties into my theory from last time about Vin's earring, which is that Vin is a special kind of MISTBORN, like she's more powerful than normal MISTBORN. You know, she's the protagonist, so she's probably gonna turn out to be the hero of ages. That's how this works in fantasy. But I do still think that the earring might be suppressing her power somehow, because like the book does like constantly draw attention to the fact that she always has the earring in, that she got from her mother right after either the mom, or if I'm right, Vin herself murdered Vin's baby sister. So I think the earring is going to turn out to be tied to her superpowers. Either it keeps them in check and she's actually even more powerful, or the earring is what gives her this boost in power. Either way, it's gonna be pretty weird and inexplicable that her mother just had this lying around. But I do feel like there's something there. Like I'm gonna be very surprised if it turns out the earring isn't a plot device of some kind by the end of this. That being said, I was going to end this by predicting what I think is going to happen in the 5th part, but I honestly have no idea. Like, this has gone in directions I was not expecting. I'm going to say, like, I guess one prediction I have is that we're going to learn what a Chandra is. And we are going to probably learn what Kolos are. Which keep being mentioned, but we don't really have any idea what they are, apart from their name implying that they're, you know, big. So yeah, I don't know how this is gonna end. I mean, it's clearly not gonna end, like, with a total victory for the good guys, because there's 2 more books. I mean, technically there's, like, 6 more books, but 2 more in this specific series. Within MISTBORN, there's the second MISTBORN series, which I think takes place like hundreds of years later or something, like a different era. We'll see when I get to those. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now. Yeah. See you next time.